The Zephyrian flagship Dominion's edge hung in the darkness above Earth like a steel cathedral, its crystalline spires catching the pale light of distant stars. Prince KLTHYSS stood before the massive observation deck, his forearms clasped behind his back, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath them. His silver skin rippled with patterns of confusion, a biological trait his species had evolved to communicate emotions without the crude vocalizations other races required. 3 cycles had passed since the Zephyrian Empire had made contact with the humans. 3 cycles of attempted negotiations, cultural exchanges, and, increasingly frustrated diplomatic meetings. The humans were unlike any species the galaxy had encountered. They possessed no natural weapons, no thick hide, no venomous glands, no psychic abilities. By all logical assessments, they should have been extinct within their first millennium. Yet here they were, not only surviving but thriving on a planet that seemed determined to kill them. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, their homeworld was a death trap that would have broken any sensible species. The humans called it home and built civilizations on its most dangerous fault lines. "Your Highness," came the synthesized voice of Commander Vextai through the ship's communication system. "The human delegation has arrived for the cultural exchange ceremony. They're requesting permission to bring their celebration aboard." KLTHYSS turned from the viewport, his elongated head tilting in the gesture his species used to indicate puzzlement. "Celebration? Our intelligence reports indicated this date holds no strategic significance for their species. December 25th appears in their calendar systems, but there are no records of military victories or territorial acquisitions on this date." "No, Your Highness. Our xenobiologists have been studying their transmissions. Apparently, this Christmas, as they call it, is related to the birth of one of their historical figures. They engage in ritualistic gift-giving, consumption of specific foods, and..." Vextai paused, his mechanical voice processing the strange concept, gathering with family units to express something they term joy. "Joy?" KLTHYSS's skin patterns shifted to display deeper confusion. "Elaborate." "Our translation matrices struggle with the concept, Your Highness. The closest equivalent in our language would be satisfaction of completed objectives, but human joy appears to require no achievement, no conquest, no logical purpose. They simply experience it." The prince walked through the sterile corridors of his ship toward the docking bay. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 47 star systems through superior logic, advanced weaponry, and ruthless efficiency. Every species they encountered followed predictable patterns: fear, submission, eventual integration into their empire as a labor caste. The humans had done none of these things. When the Zephyrian fleet had arrived in Earth's solar system, expecting the usual cowering and surrender, the humans had instead sent a small delegation with a message that roughly translated to, "Welcome to our neighborhood. We've prepared a feast and some entertainment. Would you like to come down for dinner?" The delegation had been led by an elderly human female named Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's lead xenobiologist, and a middle-aged male called Ambassador Rodriguez. They had arrived at the flagship not with weapons or shields, but with containers of food, primitive musical instruments, and something they called holiday decorations. KLTHYSS reached the docking bay as the human shuttle attached to their airlock. The bay had been sanitized and prepared according to strict Zephyrian protocol, but somehow the humans had already begun transforming it. Ambassador Rodriguez emerged first, carrying what appeared to be a small tree covered in glowing lights and reflective spheres. "Prince KLTHYSS." Rodriguez called out, his voice carrying an energy that the Zephyrians' translation software tagged as enthusiasm, another concept that had no proper equivalent in their language. "Thank you for accepting our invitation to celebrate Christmas with us." Dr. Chen followed, pushing a cart loaded with boxes that emitted pleasant aromas. "We brought traditional Christmas dinner," she explained, her weathered face displaying the peculiar human expression called a smile. "Turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and cookies. Oh, and hot chocolate." The prince studied these two humans carefully. According to his intelligence files, Dr. Chen was 73 Earth years old, well past the prime age for most species, yet she moved with vitality. Ambassador Rodriguez showed none of the deference or fear that other species displayed when meeting Zephyrian royalty. Instead, both humans seemed genuinely pleased to be here. "I do not understand the purpose of this gathering," KLTHYSS stated. Your species faces imminent evaluation for integration into our empire. Why do you waste time on frivolous activities? Dr. Chen and Ambassador Rodriguez exchanged glances, and something passed between them that KLTHYSS couldn't identify. Your Highness, Dr. Chen said gently, may I ask you a personal question? The request was so unprecedented that KLTHYSS's skin pattern shifted through 3 different configurations before settling on cautious interest. Proceed. When was the last time you did something simply because it brought you joy? The question hung in the sanitized air of the docking bay like an impossible riddle. KLTHYSS searched his memory banks, consulted his education files, even accessed the ship's cultural database. Joy. A positive emotional state experienced without logical cause or beneficial outcome. I do not understand the question, he finally admitted. That's exactly what we hope to help with, Rodriguez said, beginning to unpack one of the boxes. Christmas isn't about logic or achievement or conquest. It's about connection. About finding light in the darkness. About celebrating the fact that we exist together in this vast, cold universe. As the humans worked, more of their delegation arrived. A young woman named Lisa carried something called a speaker that began emitting rhythmic sounds, music, the humans called it. An elderly man named Frank brought out playing cards and began shuffling them with practiced ease. A family with 2 small children started hanging colorful items from the walls. KLTHYSS watched in fascination as his sterile docking bay transformed. The humans moved with purposeful chaos, each action seeming random yet contributing to a greater pattern. They called out to each other, shared tasks, laughed at things that were not logically humorous. Your Highness, Commander Vextai's voice crackled through the calm. Shall I prepare containment protocols? The human's behavior appears increasingly erratic. But KLTHYSS found himself reluctant to stop whatever was happening. Negative. Continue observation. Dr. Chen approached him carrying a steaming cup. Hot chocolate, she explained. It's a Christmas tradition. Made with cocoa, milk, and just a touch of vanilla. The prince accepted the cup with 2 of his 4 hands, studying the brown liquid. What is its strategic purpose? It tastes good, she replied. It makes you feel warm inside. Sometimes that's enough. KLTHYSS sipped the liquid cautiously. His enhanced taste receptors analyzed the chemical compounds, theobromine, lactose, vanillin. Nothing toxic, nothing enhancement-inducing, nothing that served any practical purpose except, it was pleasant. His body temperature didn't actually increase, but somehow he felt warmer. Fascinating, he murmured. Around him, the humans continued their mysterious ritual. The small children had found his communications equipment and were decorating it with something called tinsel. Rather than feeling alarm at this breach of protocol, KLTHYSS found himself curious about their laughter, a sound that seemed to ripple through the air and create vibrations he could feel in his chest cavity. Ambassador Rodriguez appeared beside him, offering a small package wrapped in colorful paper. This is for you. I do not understand. We have not concluded any trade agreements. It's a gift. We give them because we want to, not because we have to. KLTHYSS stared at the package. In Zephyrian culture, all exchanges served specific purposes: resources for technology, labor for protection, submission for survival. The concept of giving something for no reason was alien to his programming. Open it, urged Lisa, the young woman with the music device. With careful precision, KLTHYSS unwrapped the paper to reveal a small crystalline object that caught and reflected light in complex patterns. What is its function? It's a snow globe, Dr. Chen explained. You shake it and watch the snow fall. It serves no purpose except to be beautiful. The prince lifted the object and shook it as instructed. Thousands of tiny white particles swirled through the clear liquid inside, creating patterns of mesmerizing complexity. He found himself watching the motion long after it had settled, then shaking it again. Do you like it? Asked one of the children, a small female with dark hair and bright eyes. Like? KLTHYSS tested the word. Another concept without proper translation. I find it aesthetically pleasing. The patterns are soothing to observe. That means you like it, the child said with authority that impressed him. I like it too. That's why we picked it for you. As the evening progressed, HFY found himself drawn deeper into the human celebration. They shared food that served no nutritional enhancement, comfort food, they called it, designed purely for pleasure. They sang songs that conveyed no tactical information but somehow made the chest cavity vibrations increase in frequency and intensity. Frank taught him a game called poker, which involved calculated risks and bluffing skills the prince recognized but had never applied for entertainment. Lisa played music from different human cultures, each style creating different emotional responses that his species had never developed words to describe. Most puzzling of all was their treatment of each other. Dr. Chen helped the elderly Frank when his hands trembled slightly. Rodriguez spent considerable time listening to one delegation member share stories about family members who lived far away. The children were protected and cherished by adults who shared no genetic material with them. Commander HFY spoke quietly into his communicator, run a psychological analysis on the human delegation. Determine what enhancement drugs or mental conditioning creates this behavioral pattern. Several minutes later, Vexed Eye's response crackled back, scans show no artificial enhancements, Your Highness. No drugs, no mental conditioning, no technological augmentation. These appear to be baseline human emotional responses. Impossible. No species naturally exhibits such behavior without evolutionary advantage. According to our xenobiology team, these emotional states may actually provide significant survival advantages. Group cohesion, stress reduction, increased immune system function, enhanced problem solving through diverse perspective integration. HFY processed this information while watching Rodriguez help Dr. Chen adjust the small tree's position. They worked together not because duty demanded it, but because cooperation seemed to generate more of that mysterious warm feeling that the hot chocolate had initiated. As the celebration continued, the prince noticed something extraordinary happening to himself. The rigid patterns of his skin had begun to soften. Colors he had never produced before began to ripple across his silvery surface, warm golds and soft blues that his species had no names for. Your Highness, Dr. Chen appeared beside him again. Forgive the observation, but your coloration is beautiful. We've never seen those patterns before. Nor have I, HFY admitted. My species typically displays only tactical emotions, caution, aggression, satisfaction of conquest. I do not recognize these new patterns. Maybe you're feeling something new, she suggested gently. Something your species hasn't had names for yet. The small female child who had spoken about the snow globe approached him again, carrying something in her hands. We made you something else, she announced. She held up a crude drawing created with colorful marking implements. It showed stick figures that he assumed represented the humans, and a taller figure with 4 arms that was clearly meant to be him. Above them, she had drawn a large yellow circle. What does the circular symbol represent? He asked. It's the sun, she explained. But also happiness. See how everyone is smiling under it? That's what Christmas is about, finding the happiness that's always there, even when things seem dark. HFY studied the drawing with the same intensity he would apply to strategic battle plans. Happiness, he repeated, testing the word in the human language rather than relying on translation. A positive emotional state that requires no external justification. Exactly, the child beamed. You're learning. As the celebration wound down, the humans began to clean up their decorations and pack away their food. But something had fundamentally changed in the docking bay. The sterile efficiency of Zephyrian design seemed harsh and cold compared to the warmth that had filled the space just moments before. Prince HFY Ambassador Rodriguez said as they prepared to depart, "Thank you for sharing Christmas with us. This has been truly special." I am uncertain why, the prince replied honestly, but I find myself reluctant to see this gathering end. Dr. Chen smiled, that peculiar human expression that involved facial muscle contractions but somehow conveyed warmth. The feeling you're experiencing might be what we call sadness, the opposite of happiness, but equally valuable. It tells us when something matters to us. After the humans had departed, HFY remained in the docking bay, holding the snow globe and studying the crude drawing. The warm patterns continued to ripple across his skin, and he realized he was experiencing something that had no equivalent in his species' emotional vocabulary. For the first time in his existence, Prince KLTHYSS was beginning to understand what the humans meant when they spoke of happiness. And, more troubling still, he was beginning to want more of it. He activated his personal communication device and sent a message that would alter the course of the Zephyrian Empire forever: delay integration protocols for the human species. Request extended cultural study period. Classification, Priority 1. In his quarters that night, KLTHYSS placed the snow globe on his desk where he could see it clearly. He shook it once before settling into his rest cycle, watching the artificial snow drift through its contained environment. For the first time in his life, he experienced something that served no tactical purpose, achieved no strategic objective, and provided no evolutionary advantage. He experienced contentment. Outside his viewport, the blue-green planet continued its rotation, carrying billions of humans who had somehow learned to find light in darkness, to create joy from nothing, to build happiness in a universe that offered no logical reason for such emotions to exist. And, in the depths of space, a Zephyrian prince began to understand that perhaps logic wasn't the only way to navigate the cosmos. The Zephyrian High Council convened in the crystalline chambers of their homeworld, HFY Prime, where angular geometries and cold perfection had defined their civilization for 10,000 years. Emperor Thexaran presided over the assembly, his towering form radiating the deep purples and sharp silvers that indicated supreme authority among their species. Prince KLTHYSS stood before the council, aware that his unprecedented request for extended cultural study had created ripples of confusion throughout the empire's hierarchy. His skin patterns remained carefully neutral, though beneath the surface, new colors threatened to emerge: the warm golds and soft blues he had discovered during the human celebration. "Explain your reasoning, Prince KLTHYSS," the emperor commanded, his voice resonating through the chamber's perfect acoustics. "Why do you request delay of a routine integration? The humans possess no significant military capabilities, no advanced technologies, no resources we cannot obtain more efficiently elsewhere." KLTHYSS had prepared for this moment, but found himself struggling with concepts that had no equivalent in their language. "Your Majesty, the humans demonstrate behavioral patterns that suggest their species may possess strategic advantages we have not yet identified." "Elaborate," came the synthesized voice of Council Member ZYXTAL, the Empire's chief military strategist. "They exhibit emotional states that enhance their survival capabilities beyond logical parameters. During my observation, I witnessed humans performing complex cooperative tasks without hierarchical command structure, generating innovative solutions through what they term brainstorming, and maintaining psychological stability under adverse conditions through social bonding rituals." The Council's collective skin patterns shifted to display skeptical analysis. Emperor Thexaran leaned forward in his throne. "You speak of emotions, Prince. Are you suggesting that their irrationality is somehow advantageous?" KLTHYSS reached for the snow globe the human child had given him, which he had brought as evidence. As he shook it, watching the artificial snow dance through its contained environment, something remarkable happened to his skin. Those new warm patterns began to emerge despite his attempts to suppress them. "I am suggesting, Your Majesty, that their emotions may not be irrational at all. They appear to serve functions we have not recognized because we have never developed equivalent states ourselves." The Emperor rose from his throne, towering over his son. "Prince KLTHYSS, your coloration displays patterns I do not recognize. Have you been exposed to some form of human contamination?" "No, Your Majesty. These patterns emerged naturally during my cultural observation. The humans have a term for what I believe I experienced: happiness. It appears to be a positive emotional state that enhances cognitive function, increases creativity, strengthens social bonds, and improves problem-solving capabilities." Council Member Vorthax, ancient even by Zephyrian standards, spoke with the authority of millennia. "Emotions are inefficient. They cloud judgment, waste energy, and lead to unpredictable behavior. This is why the Zephyrian Empire has excised such weaknesses from our evolution." "With respect, Council Member Vorthax," KLTHYSS replied, "I request permission to demonstrate what I observed." The request sent ripples of shock through the chamber. No one challenged the Council's wisdom, especially not with requests for demonstrations of alien behavior. But the Emperor's curiosity outweighed protocol. Proceed, Terran commanded. HFY had prepared for this possibility. From his personal storage unit, he produced items the humans had given him during their celebration: sheets of colorful paper, simple musical instruments, and samples of their comfort food. He had also brought detailed recordings of their Christmas celebration. The humans engage in activities they call play, he began, distributing the colorful papers. These serve no apparent strategic purpose, yet they generate the emotional state called happiness, which then enhances their capabilities in surprising ways. He demonstrated the paper folding technique one of the human children had taught him: origami, they called it. The simple act of creating three-dimensional forms from flat paper required spatial reasoning, fine motor control, and pattern recognition. As the council members followed his instructions, something extraordinary began to happen. For the first time in Zephyrian history, the governing body of their empire began to experience something beyond tactical emotions. Their skin patterns started displaying colors that had no names in their language: soft greens, warm oranges, gentle purples that were nothing like the harsh authority colors of their political system. Fascinating, murmured council member Kelvin, studying the paper crane she had created. The process engaged neural pathways I was not aware existed. HFY then played recordings of human music, not their military marches or work songs, but the gentle melodies they had shared during Christmas. The sounds created vibrations that resonated through the chamber in ways their efficient communication systems never had. Observe your physiological responses, he instructed. Decreased stress hormones, increased oxygen efficiency, enhanced electrical activity in creative centers of the brain. The humans have discovered that these irrational activities actually optimize their biological systems. Emperor Terran stared at his own hands, which had begun to display the soft blues that HFY now associated with contentment. This is unprecedented. How long have they possessed these capabilities? According to their historical records, Your Majesty, for their entire evolutionary history. While we developed efficiency and logic, they developed emotional complexity. While we eliminated variables, they learned to thrive within them. The prince then shared the food the humans had given him: simple cookies sweetened with honey and spices. The act of consuming something purely for pleasure rather than nutritional efficiency was so foreign to Zephyrian experience that several council members displayed patterns of confusion so intense they threatened to overload their biological communication systems. The sweetness serves no survival purpose, observed council member Dracor. Yet consuming it generates sensations that I lack words to describe. The humans call it delight, HFY explained. A positive response to pleasant sensory input that serves to reinforce behaviors that enhance quality of life rather than mere survival. As the demonstration continued, the chamber began to transform. The cold perfection of Zephyrian architecture seemed harsh compared to the gentle warmth spreading through the room. For perhaps the first time in their species' history, the High Council was experiencing emotions that had no strategic value and discovering that value might not be the only measure of worth. Prince HFY, the Emperor said finally, you spoke of happiness. Define this concept as precisely as possible. The prince considered carefully. From my observations, Your Majesty, happiness appears to be a state of positive emotional resonance with one's current existence. It requires no external validation, no achievement, no conquest. It simply is. And, somehow, this state enables humans to perform beyond their apparent limitations. He activated a holographic display showing footage from the Christmas celebration. Observe how they share resources without expectation of return. How they cooperate without hierarchy. How they create beauty for no purpose beyond the creation itself. These behaviors seem inefficient, yet their species has not only survived but thrived on a planet that should have destroyed them millennia ago. The council watched in fascination as elderly Dr. Chen helped a child decorate their small tree, as Ambassador Rodriguez shared food with someone he had never met before, as families gathered together for no reason beyond the joy of being together. Their emotional bonds create networks of mutual support, HFY continued. When one individual faces hardship, others provide assistance not through obligation but through what they call love, another concept that defies our understanding but produces measurable results. Council member ZYXTAL, ever the military strategist, leaned forward with intense interest. Are you suggesting that their emotional systems constitute a form of battlefield advantage? I am suggesting something far more significant, KLTHYSS replied. I believe their emotional systems constitute a form of evolutionary advancement that we have never encountered. While we achieved dominance through force and logic, they achieved resilience through cooperation and joy. The Emperor stood and walked to the chamber's central viewing port, gazing out at their homeworld's perfect cities of crystal and metal. Everything was efficient, logical, purposeful. Nothing was beautiful. Nothing generated the warm patterns now flickering across his skin. Prince KLTHYSS, you stated that you experienced this happiness during your cultural observation. Describe the sensation with scientific precision. The prince paused, realizing that scientific precision was inadequate for what he had felt. Your Majesty, it was as though my entire being resonated with positive harmonics. Not the satisfaction of completed objectives, not the pleasure of conquered enemies, but something entirely new. It was as though I had discovered that existence itself was worthwhile, regardless of achievement. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle vibrations of recorded human music still playing softly in the background. The assembled council members examined their own hands, their own skin patterns, their own unprecedented responses to alien concepts. Your Majesty, Council Member Vorthax spoke with obvious reluctance, I must report unusual sensations during this demonstration. My logical matrices suggest these responses are inefficient, yet my biological systems appear to be functioning at enhanced levels. Similar reports came from around the chamber. Enhanced creativity, improved problem solving, decreased stress indicators, increased social connectivity, all resulting from exposure to human emotional concepts. Emperor Thexaran returned to his throne, but his bearing had changed. The rigid authority patterns still dominated his skin, but warm undertones now flickered beneath them. Prince KLTHYSS, you request extended cultural study of the humans. What do you hope to learn? Your Majesty, I believe the humans may have discovered something that could revolutionize not just our understanding of their species, but our understanding of existence itself. They have found meaning beyond conquest, purpose beyond dominance, strength beyond force. And if their emotional systems could be understood? Perhaps even adapted? KLTHYSS felt his skin patterns shifting to display something he was beginning to recognize as excitement. Your Majesty, imagine an empire that possessed not only our logical efficiency and military might, but also the humans' resilience, creativity, and cooperative capabilities. Imagine soldiers who fought not just through duty but through love of their comrades. Imagine scientists who pursued knowledge not just for advancement but for the joy of discovery itself. The vision was staggering. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered through superior technology and ruthless efficiency, but they had always been limited by their rigid thinking patterns. The humans seemed to possess unlimited flexibility, finding solutions in situations where Zephyrian logic would declare success impossible. Council members, the Emperor addressed the chamber, vote on Prince KLTHYSS's request for extended cultural study of the human species. One by one, the council members registered their decisions. Each vote displayed on their skin in patterns of careful consideration, but now mixed with those new warm colors that spoke of something beyond mere strategic thinking. The vote was unanimous, approved. Prince KLTHYSS, Emperor Thexaran announced, you are granted authority to conduct comprehensive cultural study of the humans. You will establish extended diplomatic contact, observe their social structures, and report on the nature and applications of their emotional systems. As the council session concluded, KLTHYSS found himself holding the snow globe again, watching the artificial snow settle into peaceful stillness. Around him, the greatest minds of the Zephyrian Empire dispersed to their duties, but each carried with them something that had never existed in their civilization before, curiosity about joy. That night, alone in his quarters aboard the Dominion's Edge, Prince KLTHYSS composed a message to Dr. Sarah Chan and Ambassador Rodriguez. In it, he asked if he might return to Earth for what the humans called a longer visit. He wanted to learn more about Christmas, about family, about the strange alchemy that transforms simple moments into golden memories. He wanted to understand why a snow globe could be more fascinating than a star chart, why a child's drawing could be more precious than territorial maps, why an old woman's smile could generate more warmth than their most efficient heating systems. Most importantly, he wanted to learn if a Zephyrian prince could discover not just happiness, but the courage to choose it over the cold certainties of empire. As he prepared the message for transmission, KLTHYSS realized he was making a decision that would alter the course of two civilizations. The Zephyrian Empire had built itself on the foundation of logical conquest. But, perhaps, just perhaps, there were other foundations worth building upon. Outside his viewport, Earth continued its rotation, carrying its cargo of impossible humans who had somehow learned to transform the vast coldness of space into something warm, meaningful, and inexplicably beautiful. And, in the darkness between stars, a prince began to dream of snow globes and paper cranes, of hot chocolate and children's laughter, of all the illogical wonders that awaited discovery in the strange and magnificent realm of human happiness. 6 months had passed since Prince KLTHYSS first tasted hot chocolate and experienced the alien sensation of happiness. Now he stood not on the bridge of a Zephyrian warship, but in the kitchen of Dr. Sarah Chen's suburban home outside Geneva, learning to bake Christmas cookies for the second time. The secret, Dr. Chen explained, her weathered hands guiding his forearms as they worked the cookie dough, is not to overmix. Baking is as much about feeling as it is about following instructions. KLTHYSS had learned many things about feeling during his extended stay on Earth. His skin now displayed a constant rainbow of emotions that would have been considered a dangerous malfunction by his species' medical standards. The Zephyrian diplomatic team had initially been alarmed by his transformation, but the results were impossible to argue with. In 6 months of cultural study, the prince had facilitated more successful negotiations than the empire had achieved in decades of conquest. His reports to the High Council had triggered a revolution in Zephyrian thinking. Their military strategists were studying human battle tactics that emphasized adaptability over overwhelming force. Their scientists were exploring research methodologies that valued creativity over rigid protocol. Their philosophers were grappling with concepts that had no equivalent in their language. Kale called Ambassador Rodriguez from the living room. The humans had shortened his name in a gesture of affection that still amazed him. "Could you help me with the Christmas tree lights? I think I've created what humans call a hopeless tangle." The prince carefully set aside his cookie preparation and joined Rodriguez in the living room, where a small disaster of colored lights had indeed occurred. As they worked together to unravel the mess, KLTHYSS marveled at how such a simple activity could generate contentment. There was no strategic value to untangling lights, no military objective achieved, yet the cooperative effort created bonds of friendship that strengthened with each shared task. "Rodriguez," KLTHYSS said carefully, still struggling with informal human address patterns, "may I ask you a question that puzzles my species?" "Of course, friend." Friend. Another concept that defied Zephyrian understanding. Rodriguez was not a genetic relative, not a military ally, not a useful resource. Yet he had become something precious to the prince in ways that no strategic manual could explain. "Your species faces extinction threats continuously: disease, natural disasters, wars among yourselves, eventual stellar death. Yet you spend considerable energy on activities like Christmas celebrations that do nothing to address these threats. Why?" Rodriguez paused in his untangling, his expression growing thoughtful. "That's a profound question, Kale. I think it's because happiness isn't about solving all our problems. It's about finding meaning while we work on them." Before KLTHYSS could ask for clarification, the front door burst open in the chaotic manner he had learned to associate with human children. Lisa Chen Rodriguez, Dr. Chen's granddaughter and Rodriguez's stepdaughter, exploded into the house with the energy that only 7-year-old humans seemed to possess. "Grandma! Kale! Look what I made in school." She held up a construction of popsicle sticks, glue, and glitter that appeared to serve no function beyond existing. "It's a spaceship for Christmas fairies." Dr. Chen emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron, and examined the creation with the same careful attention she would give a scientific hypothesis. "It's beautiful, Lisa. Tell me about these Christmas fairies." As the child launched into an elaborate explanation of fictional creatures who apparently delivered joy throughout the universe, KLTHYSS found himself studying this interaction with the intensity he once reserved for battle analyses. The adults were engaging completely with something they knew to be imaginary, yet their attention generated genuine happiness in the child, which created positive emotional responses in the adults, which reinforced the child's creativity. It was a closed loop of joy production that required no external input beyond participation. His contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Frank Morrison, the elderly neighbor who had taught him poker during his first Christmas celebration. Frank now visited regularly, having declared HFY the most interesting alien he'd ever met, a statement that meant more to the prince than any military commendation. "Kale, my boy," Frank announced, settling into his favorite chair with practiced ease, "I've got news from my grandson at MIT. That paper you wrote about Zephyrian mathematical concepts has caused quite a stir in academic circles." The prince felt his skin patterns shift to display what he had learned was embarrassment mixed with pride. During his stay, he had begun sharing Zephyrian knowledge with human scientists, not through formal treaty negotiations but through the simple human concept of intellectual curiosity. The results had been extraordinary. Human scientists, operating through what they called peer review and open collaboration, had taken Zephyrian mathematical concepts and developed applications that even his own species had never considered. Their approach was chaotic, inefficient, and brilliant in ways that defied every principle of Zephyrian research methodology. "Dr. Martinez wants to know if you'd consider a guest lecture series," Frank continued. "Something about interdimensional mathematics made accessible to undergraduate students." "I would be honored," HFY replied, then paused. "Though I confess I still struggle with the human concept of making knowledge accessible. In Zephyrian society, advanced knowledge is restricted to qualified specialists." Lisa, who had been listening with the intense concentration that children brought to adult conversations, piped up, "But that's silly. If only some people know things, then only some people can make new things with those things. If everyone knows them, everyone can make new things." The simplicity of this 7-year-old's logic struck HFY like a revelation. Human advancement occurred not through restricting knowledge to elites, but through democratizing it and trusting in the collective creativity of their species. It was wildly inefficient and absolutely brilliant. Dr. Chen joined them in the living room, carrying a tray of tea and fresh cookies. "Speaking of knowledge sharing, Kale, we received a fascinating transmission from your High Council today. They're requesting detailed reports on human educational methodologies." This news sent warm patterns of excitement rippling across the prince's skin. Over the months, his reports had gradually convinced the Zephyrian Empire that humans represented not a species to be conquered, but a civilization to be learned from. The request for educational information suggested they were considering fundamental changes to their own society. "There's more," Dr. Chen continued. "Emperor Thexaran has requested permission to send a cultural delegation to Earth for what he terms happiness studies." The room fell silent except for the crackling of the fireplace. Lisa broke the quiet with her characteristic directness. "Does that mean more aliens are coming for Christmas?" "It appears so," HFY confirmed, his skin displaying patterns of anticipation mixed with concern. "Though I worry they may not be prepared for the emotional impact. My own transformation has been significant." Rodriguez laughed, the sound carrying warmth that still amazed the prince. "Kale, when you first arrived, you were so rigid I thought you might snap in half. Now look at you baking cookies, playing with children, worrying about your fellow Zephyrians like any concerned friend would." The observation was accurate. The prince, who had stood before the High Council 6 months ago, displaying only tactical emotions and speaking in formal protocols, had been replaced by someone who felt genuine affection for an elderly poker player, who found joy in a child's imaginary creatures, who experienced satisfaction in the simple act of successfully baking pastries. "The change disturbed some members of my species," HFY admitted. "Commander Vextai believes I have been compromised by exposure to human emotional contamination." Frank snorted with amusement. "Emotional contamination. That's the best description of happiness I've heard yet." As evening approached, they gathered around the dinner table for what had become a daily ritual during his stay. The humans called it family dinner, though their family structure defied every Zephyrian understanding of genetic relationships. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez, and Lisa were connected by bonds of choice rather than biology, yet their emotional connections were stronger than any military unit cohesion he had observed. During the meal, they shared stories of their day, discussed plans for the future, and engaged in gentle teasing that would have been considered insubordination in Zephyrian society but somehow strengthened their bonds. KLTHYSS contributed his own observations about human behavior, cultural comparisons with Zephyrian practices, and, increasingly, personal reflections that would have been unthinkable for someone of his rank in his home society. "You know," Rodriguez said as they cleared dishes together, "when you first arrived, you kept asking about the strategic purpose of everything we did. What do you think about that now?" KLTHYSS considered while washing dishes another activity that served no strategic purpose yet had become deeply satisfying. "I believe I understand now that humans have discovered something my species missed. Purpose doesn't always come from grand objectives. Sometimes it emerges from small moments, shared experiences, connections between individuals." Lisa, standing on a chair to help dry dishes, looked up at him seriously. "Kale, do you think your people will learn to be happy like humans?" The question carried weight far beyond its simple phrasing. The prince set down the dish he was washing and knelt to meet the child's eyes. "I hope so, Lisa. I hope they can learn what I have learned here." "What's that?" "That existence is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be experienced." Later that evening, after Lisa had been tucked into bed with stories about Christmas fairies who traveled between stars, the adults gathered in the living room for what had become their customary end-of-day conversation. The Christmas tree lights cast warm shadows on the walls, and the fire crackled softly in the hearth. "Kale," Dr. Chen said gently, "you know that eventually you'll need to return to your people. How do you think they'll respond to what you've learned?" The prince studied the snow globe that had started his transformation, which now sat on the mantelpiece among family photos and Lisa's artwork. "I believe some will embrace these concepts. Others will resist. Change is difficult for a species that has built its entire civilization on rigid principles." "But, worth pursuing?" Rodriguez asked. "Essential," KLTHYSS replied with conviction. "My species has achieved great things through logic and efficiency, but we have never achieved what humans create every day: meaning, joy, love, hope. We have conquered stars but never learned to be truly alive among them." His personal communicator chimed softly, indicating an urgent message from the Dominion's edge. As he read the transmission, his skin patterns shifted through surprise, excitement, and deep satisfaction. "What is it?" Dr. Chen asked. "The High Council has made a decision," he announced. "They are officially reclassifying humanity from integration candidate to cultural alliance partner. The Zephyrian Empire seeks not to conquer humanity, but to learn from them. And..." He paused as the full implication struck him, "they have appointed me as the first Zephyrian ambassador of emotional studies." The room erupted in celebration. Lisa, awakened by the commotion, appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas and was promptly invited to join the impromptu party. Frank arrived within minutes, having heard the noise from next door and correctly assuming that something wonderful had happened. As they celebrated with impromptu music, hastily prepared snacks, and the kind of chaotic joy that had once seemed so alien to KLTHYSS, the prince realized that this moment embodied everything he had learned about human happiness. It wasn't planned, it served no strategic purpose, it solved no pressing problems. It simply was a spontaneous eruption of shared joy that transformed an ordinary evening into a memory that would warm hearts for years to come. Standing in the middle of the celebration, surrounded by friends who had taught him to bake cookies and play poker and find meaning in snow globes, Prince KLTHYSS finally understood the answer to his original question. Happiness wasn't something humans talked about. It was something they lived, something they shared, something they created from nothing more than the decision to be present with each other in a universe that offered no guarantees except the certainty of connection. As the celebration continued around him, KLTHYSS felt his skin displaying patterns of joy so complex and beautiful that they had no equivalent in any Zephyrian emotional vocabulary. He was no longer just a prince of a conquering empire. He was a friend, a learner, a bridge between worlds. Most importantly, he was happy. Outside the window, snow began to fall on the small suburb where an alien prince had learned to be human, and where humanity had gained its first advocate among the stars. In the distance, lights from the Zephyrian flagship twinkled like another star in the constellation of possibilities. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but full of promise. Two civilizations would learn from each other, share knowledge and wisdom, and perhaps discover that the universe was vast enough for both logic and love, efficiency and joy, conquest and cooperation. But that was tomorrow's adventure. Tonight was for friends and family, for Christmas cookies and snow globes, for the simple, profound miracle of finding happiness in the infinite darkness between the stars. And, in a kitchen where an alien prince had learned to bake, the scent of vanilla and hope filled the air as the galaxy took its first step toward a future brighter than either species could have imagined alone.